Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Red Bank Planning Board will come to order this 15th day of May. The time is 7 p.m. exactly. Notice this meeting is being held in accordance with the public laws of 1975, Chapter 231, and adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by notice sent to the Asbury Park Press, the 2 River Times, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal building as well as the municipal website. Roll call, please.
Mayor Portman. Alex Schroeder. Here.
Here.
Dan Mancuso,
Here.
Thomas Welsh. Michael Ballard. Art Murphy,
Here.
Juanita Lewis. Here. Linda Menta,
Here.
Christina Bonatakis. Here. Barbara Boas. Here. David Cassidy
Here.
and Fred Stone.
Here. We have no minutes or administrative matters tonight. We have 2 public hearings. Before we jump back to 9-11 West Street, we have 156 West Front Street, Block 6, Lot 20, Plug Naturals LLC in the BR1 zone for conditional use and site plan approval. We have an attorney.
Yes, Gregory Millen for Plug Natural. Here to ask the board to take jurisdiction and to carry the application without further notice.
We are happy to do that. I'll make a motion that we're going to carry this application to the July 17th meeting.
I'll make the second.
It's July 17th, right?
July 17th.
Yes.
Without further notice.
I'll get into that.
Okay, who first? I'm sorry.
Me.
You can do that by voice vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ladies and gentlemen, if you are here for the 156 West Front Street application, we are carrying that to July 17th. There'll be no further notice in the newspaper. They've satisfied the requirement to notice. We are taking jurisdiction of the application and we will be hearing it on July 17th at the request of the applicant. And Greg Milne, I didn't recognize you. How the hell are you? Can you say hello to Gail for me?
Thank you.
So that's it. No more notice on that one. We'll see you in July. Next up, 911 West Street, continuing Block 34, Lot 1, Canopy Crossroads, conditional use site plan approval and bulk variances for the conditional use to permit retail cannabis sales and delivery establishment at the premises. Mr. Brodsky, Mr. Rosidi, welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Rick Brodsky, on behalf of the applicant here for this continued hearing with respect to the applicant's application for minor site plan and conditional use approval for a retail cannabis sales establishment located property, as the chair indicated, 9-11 Street in your BR1 zone. As the board may recall, we got through the most part got through our direct testimony when we were here last time. You heard from both the applicant's operator as well as the architect. It had been opened up to the public for question, and that's kind of where we left off as far as I can recall. There was a question that had been raised with regard to there were some errors in the zoning box in the plan that was submitted. So Mr. Rosidi, the architect, submitted a revised plan, which he's just going to walk the board through very quickly. No changes to the plan, no changes to the proposal. Remember, there's no new construction proposed. Same use, only new variances remain as the parking variance and also proposed variance with regard to the location of the desk. That all stays the same. It was just a recitation of the requirements in the zone, but again, there's no new construction proposed, no new variances associated with regard to that. So out of an abundance of caution, even though we didn't think it necessary, I also renoticed just to make sure that there was no question on that. So unless the board has any questions, what I'd like to do is just have Steve run through and very quickly to confirming the revisions that were made to the plan. that's been resubmitted,
Any questions?
Do the revisions and questions.
very quickly, and then we'll go right back, I'll pull Mr. Zeitman up for his continued.
Okay, you want to pull that mic over,
Yeah.
Mr. Brodsky, you guys can use both of them. Mr. Recedy, you're still under oath from last time.
But we do have a new,
That's right, go ahead.
right, you swear to tell the truth, the truth and nothing but the truth. Beg Gino.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Recedy, you remain under oath as the chair indicated. You heard me just run through the nature of the revised plan that was submitted. If you can just briefly walk the board through that, just to confirm what I said, then we'll see if the board or if anyone has.
I just, drawing A1, which has been revised.
All right, and five, Mike, that's where we.
Quickly, so this is a lot of people here. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Want to make sure the board understands, we didn't change anything, plans, anything.
Katie, there's nothing changed as far as the plans, is that correct? Okay, we got that down. No, I mean, I know the notices, there were some errors in the block, just point them out. All right,
The site is still located in the same BR1 zone. The drawing A1 had referenced the RB zone, and some of the information on that table of bulk requirements was incorrectly noted on the drawing. And it's been revised and resubmitted May 5th for the bulk information for the BR1 zone, which in almost all cases are similar pre-existing non-conformities or minimum lot frontage on West Front Street, 100 feet required, where 46 is existing. Side yard setbacks, front yard setback, I should say, requirement in the BR1 zone is 25 feet, and we are at 23 feet. That did not change. Side yard setbacks, the principal structure 10 feet was required, and it was always one foot. At the side yard or the south side of the property, which is the liquor store. Accessory structures both from the rear and or side yard. We had 8 feet for the previous zone, but it's 5 feet. We remain requesting a variance. The setback of 3 requesting 3 feet, where 5 feet is required. Previously, no change in the building height, nothing new to the building, no additions. The minimum floor area. There are unoccupied open space requirements for the BR1 zone at 15%. So we are at 693 square feet or 11.5% the existing. Actual lot coverage 50%. We are at 38%. No changes in the floor area ratio 2.1. The population, but we are at 0.38.
Okay, and Steve, so, and let's reiterate, plan stays the same, proposal, no new construct, no change to the footprint of the building. The only new variance is necessitated by virtue of the application, the variance to permit 7 existing parking spaces
Nice though someone's actually watching.
Mr. Chair, Andy Zeitlin, who was previously sworn, when we left off, was taking questions from the public.
Mr. Zeitlin, you recognize you're still under oath, right?
Yes.
Great. Does anyone from the public have any questions for the applicant? Leave that mic over there. No, I didn't get your last name.
Come up, see you when you're.
Thank you.
Well, these were photos.
Please speak right into the microphone. It's very, and just to remind everybody.
That were taken today.
Okay, so why don't you sit down? So we can hear you on the
Well,
microphone.
let's just caution one more time. This is not the time where you can tell us about what's going on there. This is the time you ask him questions about his testimony.
We will have a comment period.
Another time, after this, where everybody's gonna get up and say what they think or what the problems are, or why it shouldn't be approved. So this may not be the time you want to tell us about what's going on.
We have an alleyway that we share. So I'd like to understand how we're gonna address that as a next door neighbor. And in that alleyway that we share, I have nothing but a party going on. So I'd like to understand how they're gonna address that.
That's a valid question.
I have clothes, beer cans, beer bottles. What are we gonna do about that? Well, because the landlord's doing nothing and I've constantly have said something to him. So I have a garbage pail this high, loaded.
Fair question about the alleyway. Do you have any plans to address whatever's going on in the alleyway?
I mean. We obviously want to maintain this as a premier spot for people to shop. So we don't want any garbage there. So we will certainly talk to the landlord and request that they keep the back of the property clean. We're certainly not going to let anybody hang out there.
So could I ask you, how long have you been doing construction?
We haven't been doing any construction.
Somebody's doing construction.
The landlord.
Landlord said you have nothing to do with the construction that's going on. Because if you've been there, you would have noticed what's going on back there. That I constantly, again, have to say to the landlord, can you please clean up and stop this from going on?
But they're just,
But you understand, the applicant is seeking permission to utilize the space. They have.
so they're not there yet.
Not there yet.
Okay, there's been construction going on. Usually, typically, it's always the applicant that's doing the construction.
Not before they get approval and a permit. It would be crazy for somebody to spend money without an approval or a building permit.
Departments do what they're doing.
They can't.
You can't get a building permit if you don't have an approval from
You're
a board.
landlord? You're asking that it's the landlord?
Landlord's been doing work.
Well, then you should talk to the landlord about it. I mean, the applicant has answered your question.
I'm asking this question. Okay, if I have to do work on my property, I gotta go to the town and get a permit.
Yeah,
So did they get a permit because they've been doing work?
you'd have to go to ask the building department. We don't know.
It doesn't have to come.
I mean, it doesn't come here for a building permit, doesn't come here. But you could certainly ask them, and
This work has been done there.
Or you can make a complaint to code enforcement and then they'll send an inspector out there. And they'll check also if building permits have been pulled or if a development permit has been pulled.
So that was my question, because if they've been working there, they would see what has happened. That's why. So
And
if they're saying
technically,
haven't
they should
done
have-
anything, then that's-
technically, if there's a permit pulled, it should be in the window of the liquor store if they're doing work there, so should be. But you can check on the third floor at the building department about that.
I apologize, I'm just tired.
No, it's okay. I get it.
Hey, Joe, real quick, let me ask a question. So when you say a shared alleyway, is it actually, is it like an easement back there? Or is it you have 3 feet and they have 3 feet? What is that? When you say it's shared, what is that?
I can show you pictures. maybe.
Oh, okay, well, hey, let me ask another question, just out of curiosity, do Gizzies own that, still own that? You buy that from Gizzies? You did buy that from them, yeah. He's still alive? Yeah,
Greg,
he was good to the town.
do you have any information on the site plan about how wide this alley is on which property it sits?
It's 3 feet and then they got 5.
it,
looks like,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
it looks like there's about 3 feet from. Getting so much feedback. There's about 3 feet from the
Kind of neat.
neighboring properties.
Just-
Property.
You can have to just yell.
Yeah.
So there's 3 feet from the applicant's property line to the neighboring building, which is Joe's property.
So my concern was if I already have a party with liquor, the last thing I need is now a party with cat.
Okay, well, that's not for us to decide for you, but that's between you and the landlord.
Established.
And as the applicant testified, they don't want that.
Yes. Because I can't get anywhere with the landlords, maybe I can get somebody.
And at this in the beginning is a great time to bring anything up. So that's a perfect opportunity to talk to the landlord about that.
Absolutely, and it looks like 3 feet of that 4 feet is on your property. And then it looks like there's a foot behind the existing building, right, so it's 3 and 1. But yeah, the applicant said he was certainly talking to landlord. They have no desire, they're gonna be putting a lot of money into this place, it wants to be improved. No desire to not get it done.
Where is everybody?
That applied to that.
Not in the alley behind the building,
Yeah.
in the front.
So my property is also. But my property, because I'm on West Front Street and West. Street. What happens if I have an entrance on West Street, which is right next to this? Are people gonna have to pass a line of people to go into West Street in order to get into my establishment? Is that what's gonna happen?
Would only be on our property, that was the testimony last time.
So they won't be lined up on.
That's right, and there's security guards.
There you go.
That's my question. I hope I don't have that problem later on.
I hope you don't either. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay. Anyone else from the public have any questions for the applicant? Anyone from the board have any other questions for the applicant?
Oh, wait, we have a question.
I don't. Come on back up.
Just identify yourself once more.
Peter S. Horstman III, Senior Vice President, General Counsel for Red Bank Plaza. On West Front Street. One also officer and General Counsel for Sanford Water, from Sanford Water Body property, which is now owned by Valley Run Apartments LLC, which is block 25 and block 26, essentially on the corner of Wall and West. Mr. Titan, at the last,
I'm sorry, could you just repeat what you just said? Valley, what apartments?
Valley Run.
Right, thank you.
Just to have any concern or curiosity, that is the owner by virtue of a 1031 like-kind exchange, but it's still in control of the same owner. That bank.
Okay.
It's a wholly owned subsidiary. Last meeting, Mr. Lennon, do I have this correctly, that you testified that there would be between 8 and 9 employees staffed at the facility at any given time?
Yes, that's correct.
And was your testimony also, or with that of the architect, that there were 10 seats in the waiting area?
I believe it's closer to 8 or 9.
Okay, we can make that 8 or 9. And your prior testimony, is it correct that in the retail dispensary area, there is room for 8 to 10 customers?
I'm sorry.
In the retail dispensary area, there's room for 8 to 10 customers?
In the waiting room,
No, I didn't ask the waiting.
okay, no, so in the actual dispensing room, no, I don't, I think it's closer to 5 or 6.
Six, okay, we'll have to correct the prior testimony then, because that was both from Mr. Racine on a number of occasions. Peter, can you-
Could you
I
be,
just want to make sure I understand. Is you're asking for, you asked about the number of employees, right? So we said 8 to 9, right? And now you're asking for.
The number of customers that the retail dispensary area can come.
Right, so the number of customers in addition to the employees and security guards. In addition to that 8 to 9.
Right, so we anticipate 3 POS stations and 2 kiosks. So the maximum number of people that can be served in the dispensing area at any one time is 5. So we're gonna
Prior
meter,
testimony was incorrect.
sorry,
The site plan and prior testimony is incorrect, that there isn't room for 8 to 10 customers in the dispensary area.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. The question is not how many would serve, how many would fit.
yeah, the occupancy on the plan says 10.8, but that's people. So are you trying to get the number of customers versus the number of employees?
I'm going into categories. I thought that was the testimony last time.
Well, yeah, I think the testimony was 10 people, but was it 10 customers? Because I don't recall that it being 10 customers.
There was up to 10 employees, depending if there were 1 or 2 managers / owners.
Right, but that was front and back. It's kind of 3, I mean, I'm looking at the plan, there's really kind of 3 sections. There's the business office, the product area and the waiting area. So the number of employees is across all 3. So is your question the retail area in the middle?
Yes,
Okay.
that's this one.
So how many members of the public, non-employees, do they anticipate being in the middle retail area at a time?
That was 5.
and that we anticipated 5.
So the prior testimony of 8 to 9 is not correct.
Is that my testimony? Or is
I
that?
think so, we'll find out when we get a transcript.
Yeah, why don't we find out?
I don't recall if that was both of the.
I don't think we ever went into
areas.
detail.
I thought the testimony was we had up to 9 employees, including, security guards and up to 2 owners. And there could be an additional, 9 people
Is Mr.
in
Brodsky sworn?
occupancy.
No, I think what we're trying to do here is avoid, I mean, in the reality, both you and the applicant want, and definitely the board wants to know what the right number is.
I know, because these people are not dropped out of helicopters, right?
Let me finish my sentence. So, I mean, that's the important thing. So if there was a misunderstanding of how many we are, I think we gotta know it, and then you're you're right in setting it straight so that everybody knows how many people are in that middle area. And so if the testimony wasn't clear or different last time, we're correcting it now, I understand. Is that right?
So to be clear, let's set forth these numbers, employees, middle area, which is point of sale area, right, and waiting room.
Okay, so I think we're focused on the middle area now, so that would be 5 customers and 3 employees.
So would it be fair to say that whatever testimony we take, there's north of 20 people in this building?
No,
No,
give me your addition. I don't understand your addition.
you have 8 to 9 employees. You have 5 retail
Whoa.
customers.
We have, okay, if you want to go through, it's. Okay, sorry again.
No, I'm not gonna do your testimony. Your testimony was your testimony. Now you're looking to qualify.
Right, if you want to argue, then we
Well,
will
are
do
you
that.
sworn?
Are you?
I'm not answering questions.
No, you will be, because it's questions for you, but you're gonna have to be sworn as well.
Stop. I mean, if there's a dispute over this, then let's find out. One more time. I heard it 30 times the last meeting, and we'll hear it one more time and let's get it straight. Okay, so we're gonna know now not only the middle, we're gonna now know front and back, 2 in the back, if I remember right. And now we're up to 7 or 8 in the middle, is that correct? I'm talking about human beings breathing.
Right, so at any one time, let me start from the front because everything's getting confused. Starting from the front,
That's the way
there
it
is
is.
there is a receptionist, there are 2 security guards. There could be a maximum of 8 people in that room, I believe. I think there's 8 seats. So.
When you say people, do you mean customers?
Customers.
Okay,
And then in the dispensing room.
let's total that.
hang on, that's 11.
Yeah,
Right.
11 total people.
And your plan says the occupancy is for 4.8.
4.8.
That's what it says.
Yeah, that's what it says in the waiting room, in the waiting area, 4.8 is the occupancy.
Okay, but then,
Occupancy is off.
so that plus the people on the benches and the seats, and that's how you're arriving at 11 people? Because obviously some of the customers you're suggesting with this seating are gonna be waiting
Right,
in seats.
right.
So 8 customers, a receptionist,
At an absolute maximum, there would be 8 customers, 1 receptionist, and a guard that's going to be coming in and out. In the main room, there would be 3 with a maximum of 5 people there, 5 customers. And then in the back room, a maximum of 2.
so three employees in the middle, 5 customers, and about the back again,
2.
2 employees.
what's in the front?
So up to 21 people.
That sounds like at maximum capacity, yeah. And again, the security guards are going to be outside as well as potentially 1 inside.
So up to 21 is a reasonable answer to the question.
20,
22.
All right, Shauna has 22. That answer your
I
question?
can't do that.
Okay.
Answer the question, I think it's a conflict with prior testimony, but that's the testimony
Fine.
today. Got it.
I mean, you know, can I just say one thing? The number of customers is obviously something that we can reduce. We can't reduce the number of employees in order to operate the store.
There's no question. The question was answered. Let's not go into
Okay,
explanations unless they're asked.
Mr. Zyland, do you recollect the testimony of your architect at the last meeting that the occupancy level for your half of the building was about 50 as an occupancy permit?
I believe the architect was right behind me and he'd be more than happy to address that.
Did you say 50?
I know.
If that was testified to, that was a mistake.
All right, well, we'll get that on the transcript as well. Right.
So what is the now, is the 21 the maximum and we now agree that?
Yes. I actually, it could be 20. I mean, I don't, you know.
No, what's the maximum?
Okay, I'm sorry, 21, thank you.
You got it? Say that's the answer. Could be 20, could be 15, but it's going to be 21, right? As a max.
And this testimony is being reconstructed right now, but I would also ask the board to try to recollect that the architect's testimony was that there would be 38 people at any one given point in time at maximum use.
I would be happy to listen back to the tape. I do not remember numbers that high. I could be wrong.
Can we correct the testimony tonight?
Your testimony tonight can be up to 21 or 22 people. Sure, that's fine. And that's essentially what's on the plan that was submitted.
Yes.
And that's what I'm counting here on the plan that was submitted and part of the record. But, you know, whatever the testimony was last time and this time will be taken into account.
Just a question, could that woman, Susan, could you shut that light? It shines brightly in the eye. Really distracting. Thank you.
Right?
Mr. Zyland, this building is it's one building, correct?
Yes.
And until recently, it was used entirely as a liquor store, is that correct?
No. My understanding is that the space that is called 9 West was previously rented to a different studio.
You're positive that 9 West was not a liquor store?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying previously there was an art store there. The owners had, when they bought it, I believe the liquor store was on their side, it was on the 9 West side. And when they bought, when they took over the liquor store, I believe they moved it to 11. That's my understanding, but I can't vouch for that. That's just a story.
Oh, we don't want a story, we want.
He's killing himself now.
So are you aware that this has been a liquor store in that one building for nearly 20 years now? Are you aware of that?
But if you look at the totality of the building, it's, I was told by the landlord that it was close to 30 years.
As a liquor store?
Yes.
And you testified that there was very little business at the liquor store right now. Is that accurate? It was going out of business, so poorly run?
No.
No? All right. So we do have to be concerned about customers and parking for the liquor store.
The question?
Yes, do we have to be? No, you're not.
I mean, it's not my business.
You're not.
Isn't that
Okay,
taken
got it.
into account with the parking count?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your question? Your question is, are customers of the liquor store gonna park in the parking lot?
I don't know, do you want to testify to that?
No, I'm asking you what your question is. I didn't understand.
Well, I didn't ask that question, but would you like to testify to that?
I'm not testifying.
Well, you
I believe there was testimony that people, the liquor store would park in the parking lot. I think we're dancing on the head of a pin here.
The parking variance is for the square footage associated with this use. The parking on the site serves both the entire property. Okay.
You testified that you intended to have your employees park at the positive parking.
I believe I testified that we would reimburse employees that park there, yes.
And you realize that that parking deck is not owned by positive.
Yes.
You realize that it's owned by Red Bank Corporate Plaza.
Yes.
Have you made arrangements with Red Bank Corporate Plaza to have your employees park there?
No.
You're aware, are you not, that the Red Bank ordinance does not recognize off-street parking that is off the site unless it is owned or controlled by the applicant or an agreement is entered into with Red Bank Borough for municipal parking?
That, I don't understand that question.
I mean, assuming he realizes
Not.
that.
All right, now wait, I totally get his question. He's saying that the parking that the ordinance talks about is parking under your control. The parking in that parking garage is not under your control, but there are uses all over town that have zero parking, and there's lots of parking in the borough of Red Bank. So the answer to your question from my standpoint is yes, it's not under their control. But we certainly, as a board, take into account all the avenues that a property owner or a business owner may or may not have at their disposal for their employees and customers to park.
The chair is very articulate and obviously knows this borough well, but I would suggest to you that there is not one larger issue in Red Bank than parking.
Well, you and I can talk about that some other time. So let's move on to your next question.
Mr. Leyland, am I correct that your prior testimony, you had testified that there wasn't, I don't know, there couldn't be a better location for a cannabis retail sales store than this particular location?
I believe that that's true.
And is that because there's a liquor store right next door?
No.
Is it because there's a charter school within less than 1,000 feet away?
No.
Is it because there are only 7 parking spaces?
I gotta ask, are you implying that they want to sell cannabis to school children? Because I'm gonna take exception to the way you phrased that question.
That is not my input.
No, and I apologize because I've had issues as well, just so you know, with the original ordinance. But the way you phrased that question actually to this applicant was disrespectful, and I'm gonna call you on that because that wasn't appropriate. You're implying that they're willing to sell cannabis to school children, which is not what
No,
they're trying to do.
at your response.
Okay, good. So now we,
Question whether it's within 1,000 feet of the school.
No, but,
It's a simple question.
no, you didn't ask if it wasn't, that's not what. you asked.
And you have another bad habit. You talk when somebody else is talking. You know better than you'll get.
Wait a minute. You didn't ask if it was within 1,000 feet of the school. You asked if because it's within 1,000 feet of the school makes it a great place for a cannabis retail. Well,
That's
I
the
take
implication.
exception to that because that implies that this retail use would sell cannabis to children from a school within 1,000 feet.
That's my question.
I take exception with the way you worded it to make it sound like they were going to sell cannabis to school children.
Not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting what the characteristics of this location are.
Then ask that and not relate it to the distance from a school.
I'm attributing it to or tying it into why this is such a wonderful location. What's wonderful? about it?
And let him describe that.
This is cross-examination. I
Okay.
have to ask the questions, not open-ended. Is this one of the extraordinary locations where 7 variances are required?
That's not my area of expertise.
Oh, there's.
It doesn't matter.
There's two.
He can ask his questions. Go ahead.
I thought there were 7 variances noticed in this last notice.
No, I think there's two. I don't. Good baby.
It's fine. It doesn't, he's not, it's not in his area of expertise.
You had indicated that you anticipated developing a process for online sales and pickup of cannabis.
Pre-existing use too. I hate it.
Yes.
There's no
Are you going to dedicate parking spots, spaces for that process for online pickup?
No.
No. Mr. Zeiland, you're the CEO of the applicant, not?
No.
What is your title?
COO.
Oh, you're the chief operating officer. Did you, I'm assuming as the COO, you worked in concert with the architect in the preparation of the plans?
Yeah, I guess so, yes.
Are you aware of the minor site plan requirements that are in the Red Bank Borough ordinance as it appears in section 490-62?
Question for the art.
It's a valid, either he's familiar or not. It's a valid question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Could you repeat the question?
Are you familiar with the requirements for minor site plans in section 490-62 of the Red Bank Borough Development Regulations?
No, I'm not really that.
Mr. Chair, I don't know who would be better employees of position. I'm assuming the architect based upon this last answer. But my question is, of the 3 pages of requirements for minor site plan, were those complied with? Were those incorporated into the site plan, or were waivers requested and granted for those items not?
That's a great question for a combination of Mr. Brodsky and Mr. Rositi.
Right, so.
And for the board engineer.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna refer to the board engineer's report to analyze the submission packet, but I'll let Mr. do that.
Yeah, so the applicant submitted all the documents under the minor. It's gonna get the feedback. That's the problem.
Maybe Alex is-
Trying loud. So the applicant submitted all the documents that are required under the section applicable to this application for a minor site plan. We deemed it incomplete at first. And they subsequently submitted additional documentation. And it was deemed complete.
May I ask you more attorney question?
Sure.
So all of these items for the minor site plan are reflected on that plan, or waivers were granted by the board?
The board doesn't typically grant waivers for completeness items.
So they
It's up
should
to our
all,
determination.
they should all appear then, right?
I'm not understanding the question.
I would expect to find all of these 3 pages of required items be incorporated in that site plan. If there's no waivers.
If they're applicable to this application.
There's different requirements for different site plans.
There are certain things in here like CAFR permits and other permitting items that would not apply. Depending on the type of application where it's located.
But all other requirements are included.
Correct.
I think that's it on questions, Mr. Chairman. I do have commentary to make at the appropriate time.
Stay tuned.
Weldon?
Anyone else in the public have any questions for the applicant? Come on up.
Good evening.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Oh, so you are.
Burnham, 71 Wallace Street. I have a question. How many cash registers are there on the recreational side? Do you have for recreational use?
I'm sorry, it's only adult use.
I know, but in most of these cannabis places, there's a recreational use and there are people that have prescriptions.
We are only applying for adult use cannabis. We are not applying for medical cannabis.
Well, how many registers do you have?
3 plus 2 kiosks.
And what is a kiosk?
Kiosk is like you operate it yourself, make your decisions, and then product can be available from a pickup window.
And where's this pickup window? Inside the building?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just identify yourself. You're still under oath.
Joseph Cumbo. Wait, everything that I've heard about all these variances you gotta go through. Why that location? You have a liquor store, now you wanna put a cannabis. Why that location? You could go anywhere in New Jersey. Why there? It's curious.
First of all, I don't own the liquor store.
I understand. But you know there's a liquor store. Why would you want to put cannabis right next?
Well, there's the previous applicant, cannabis was right next to the liquor store.
Joe, you asked the question. Let him answer it.
So the question is why put it next to a liquor store?
Why there? Why there?
You gotta go through all these variants, you gotta go through all of this. You could go anywhere else and you don't have to go through all these hoops. Why that location?
I don't think it's as easy as you think, and there's 2 variances. And
Sir, you can't talk. We can't have.
He said, you know,
No, he didn't.
Well, he's talking. That's the problem.
Why do you like that location?
why do we like it? Because it was zoned properly, it conformed, it was available. And there's not many retail locations in Red Bank that are available that are in the zone.
I thought it was not in the zone.
He's not requesting, it's permitted use in the zone.
Conditional.
Well, yeah,
I'm sorry, a conditional use in the zone.
Well, I guess your conscience is okay being right next to it.
And that's a comment, you can come back up and say that later. I'd encourage you not to, but you're welcome to since you've said it already, but you can come back if you want. Does anyone else in the public have any questions? We are going to finish this tonight, so there's going to be plenty of time for comments. So if anyone else has a question, now is the time.
Comments.
Anna? Damon, right?
Yeah.
I take notes. Welcome back, Mr. Murtha. You're under oath from last time. Just tell us your name and address again.
Damon Murtha, 39 West Street.
Just two questions. I just remember from last week, last time we met, there are plans to expand this because we have the one license. But the micro license, and then if all things go well, this will turn to a larger hub. This whole cannabis in the locations, correct?
No, the only way that we could expand is by taking over the liquor store next door, and that is not something that we control.
Oh, okay. I remember last time, people talking about that could possibly be one of the options down the line.
What
Like it was almost, I felt like it was almost talked about, like that is almost like a future next step.
if we do expand, which, you know, if our business goes well, and I hope everybody in this room wishes as well, then in the event of expansion, then we would have to come back to this board.
You talked about a different kind of license that you don't have now. And are you saying to get that, you'd need more space, which obviously if became available, could be the liquor store? Is that a fair characterization?
That's
Now, with that, and I honestly do hope success in the business, though I'm not.
Make sure you're driving towards a question here.
Well, it is.
Okay.
Well, it is, because it drives towards, like, I do want success in business, but there are families on that block, like my family. And there's family right across with young kids. And then I just pictured the amount of transit people and the queuing outside. And then if you were in my shoes, so this is my question, would you want your family right next to this?
That's an unfair question.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's unfair.
I don't think so, because this is like me.
You can come up on the comment section and do that, because we're really, when I say questions, it's about the testimony and the architecture and the plan and all. You can, that's a fair question for the comment portion when we get to that, which is going to be very soon. So don't go away.
Very good, thank you.
Come on up.
Oh, you were sworn last time. Yeah.
No, what's she?
Yeah, sure. I'm what?
Okay, go. Just give us your name and address again anyway.
Suzanne Scully, 25 Cedar Street. At the last meeting, I believe you said that the employees would be required to park at, I like it better, the Plaza parking lot. But earlier you said you may pay for them, but you don't have a contract set up. So A, are you definitely requiring employees to park at that parking lot? And B, who's responsible for enforcing it? And what happens if they don't do that? I mean, some people are lazy, they don't want to walk, a little bit.
we're going to make it very clear to our employees that they need to park there and that they're going to get reimbursed.
But if they don't, would you, if these neighbors are complaining here about parking and I notice that the employees are not doing as you said, what recourse do the neighbors have? Do they have to call the police? Do they have to go to the zoning enforcement? What recourse would a neighbor have if they notice that they are not following the requirement of parking at the parking lot?
I mean, we want the business to operate efficiently. We don't want to have lines and crowds. So we are providing for parking for employees so that we can reduce that. If an employee if an employee parks in the parking lot, they're going to be asked to leave, to move it.
Is that right? We can, if there's an approval on this application, we could make it contingent upon employee parking off-site.
Right, and then
We
just,
don't have a problem with that.
and if it's not.
Go to code enforcement,
So
like anything else in town.
that's why I want to, so it's residents who are upset with this. It's nice to-
And I can't imagine that a business that has the number of spaces that they have now, if they had 9 employees in those spaces, I cannot imagine a business owner wanting that to happen and have so little parking on site. But let's say I'm wrong and all the employees park there. He does absolutely nothing about it and someone complains, that's a code enforcement issue. And if it's in the resolution, they've got the notice to make sure that they've got some off-site situation for their employees.
No, it's great to know because residents are here and now they know every person have. I appreciate it.
Anyone else from the public have any questions? Anyone else from the board have any questions?
Can I clarify one thing? to Mr. Murtha's question, the liquor store next door, that's 11 West. If they wanted to take over that space, they would have to come back for a change of use, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's all I need.
Yes, but keep in mind, it's a conditionally permitted use in the zone. But yes, they would have to come back.
They can't just expand.
Right. The only thing that could go into that space without coming anywhere is another liquor store. Or another retail use that is permitted, not conditionally permitted.
A coin shop.
Right. Mr. Brodsky, you have anything else?
No further testimony, Mr. Chair.
I have one comment that I didn't notice last time, that we have a letter from the chief of police who has a serious concern about curbside pickup. And I see his point about that.
But so the curbside pickup was purely a health thing of COVID, and we were not planning on continuing it. It was purely just if another health emergency occurred.
So it can be a condition of approval that there will be no curbside pickup.
This is the fun part of the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a comment, you're welcome to come up. If necessary, we will limit comments to 5 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. If everyone is heard and someone wants to come back up again and continue their 5 minutes, they are welcome to. Until it's so late that I don't want to do it anymore. And I can stay up pretty late. So who wants to come up and comment first? Yeah. Really? You're gonna let Mr. Worsinger come up first? I don't care where to go, but I just thought it was funny that all these people here and no one has a comment. Oh, okay, come on up.
Oh, no,
No, I'm sorry, you didn't see him raise his hand behind you.
Come
Come on up, sir.
We're gonna let you go last so you can sum up and everything.
Mr. Chair, there'll be time for a couple brief closing remarks.
Sure. Have a seat. Let us know your name and, we gotta do that first.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Name and address, please.
My name is Ron Knotts. I'm the owner of 212 West Front Street,
Spell your last name, Ron.
KNOX.
Kind of what I thought it was. And your address again?
212 West Front Street.
And just familiarize us, which property is that?
It's, right now, it's my business also. It's called Stillwell House Fine Art Antiques. It's 2 doors towards Wawa from Brothers Pizza.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak. The first thing I'd like to do is actually extend a compliment to Andrew Zeitlin and Karen Cohen, who I had the pleasure of meeting. And I can say they're very fine people and very enthusiastic about what they're doing. With that being said, I don't think that the location that they're looking at is actually quite a fit. As somebody who owns a building that's in the green zone, I've been in the green zone and all the different itinerations of the maps that have come out, that has never varied at any point. I take an interest in what's happening, in the local area, and that interest led me to review a document that's ordinance number 2021-17. In particular, I'm looking at, let me tell you the section. I believe it's section 3. It's entitled Cannabis Businesses, and it's letter L. And this letter L, states cannabis businesses shall be prohibited in any area in which, under state or federal law, any cannabis business would be prohibited from operating based upon its proximity to a school. That is the law as it is right now. Again, this is ordinance number 2021-17. I know that there's been a lot of talk about different people having different interpretations of, what is most important. I think a lot of that is actually driven by their own perspective. I know the CREAM Act has been referred to. That's a state level. And on the federal level, it's actually very clear. In my research, I found a document that was produced by the Congressional Research Service. This is an organization that creates documents for Congress and Congress members as almost like
they actually call it a legal sidebar, so the legal professionals in here know exactly what I'm talking about. In the very first paragraph, now, I should also mention the document I'm holding was updated December 6th of 2022, so it's a pretty recent document. And the second sentence of this document says, under the Federal Controlled Substances Act, also known as the CSA, marijuana is strictly regulated and may not be legally used for medical or recreational purposes. That is federal law. Everybody in here understands the state law is different and state law is permitting it. But I am referring to this specifically to that letter L of this ordinance number 2021-17, which says that we must uphold the federal. In addition, I researched what the CSA listed as controlled substances. It's actually like a 20-page long list. I have these documents in front of me if anybody would like to refer them, or I can easily tell you how I found them. And on page 12 of 19, it lists marijuana, interestingly spelled with an H. They don't say cannabis anywhere in here, but they list it twice. They list marijuana and a marijuana extract as being federally banned substances. Now, I'm pro marijuana, I'm pro state level marijuana, but I think that the law is very clear here in that we have to uphold what's already been written in 2021-17, because that defers not to state level, but to the federal level. And even congressional aides and congressmen have agreed that cannabis is still a Schedule I substance and therefore banned in a school zone.
For what? By that also, it's banned everywhere.
That is true, but it
It's
is,
banned everywhere, not just in a school zone, it's banned everywhere.
well, that is.
No? Yeah, am I right?
I'm trying to answer correction.
Okay,
So, yes, you're right, but it is specifically banned in the school zone, more so than any other area.
it doesn't say that, it just says it's an illegal substance, it should not under the federal government be sold anywhere.
Certainly, as a non-lawyer, I don't want to get into the weeds arguing law with you. I can just tell you what I read and what it says and what my interpretation is, which seems to be.
I mentioned this last time, this is a terrible gray area. That we have the state of New Jersey violating federal law. Not only us, but 21 other states are violating federal law by authorizing the sale of marijuana, even though it is under this report, an illegal substance.
Yeah.
Now, I have the advantage because Mr. Brodsky sent me a brief on this. And basically, that's true. Everything you said is true. And then there's also sections being, I believe, from the Attorney General, am I correct? Which says that it should not be treated as a controlled substance. So we're faced in a situation where two sides are, and everything you've said is 100% true.
Thank you for.
And we're faced with a situation where the state says yes, and maybe the federal says, well, it's no, but we're thinking about not doing it. And we're stuck with a situation where the state has empowered the borough of Red Bank to allow the sale of marijuana. And we,
Can I respond to that, sir?
cannabis.
Can I respond to what you just said? Let me interrupt. Go ahead. So yes, that's true. Everything that you're saying is true. But until the law is actually changed, we have to observe and uphold the law as it is now.
I understand what you're saying. And the question probably is that there are two laws that are now in conflict, the state law and 21 other states, and also direction from the federal government.
So I'd like to refer you back.
Let me finish, right?
I beg your pardon.
Okay. And then we have the federal enforcement portion of the United States government says no. And we're caught in this quandary. My advice to the board, and was raised by a member last time, is that we're going to operate under the laws of the state of New Jersey. And that the problems that you're raising about illicit drugs is really a criminal problem. and it's an enforcement problem. It's not something that's really a zoning problem. And then we get to the issue, then, do we have a situation where we're within 1,000 feet of a school? Which is another step beyond, basically what you read is that it's illegal everywhere. And now do we say, okay, it's okay everywhere, but not within 1,000 feet of the school? Is it all right if it's 999 feet within the school? We begin to get into all kinds of problems in enforcing it, but your comments are good. And I think they should be in the record, and the board's gonna have to deal with this issue.
So you very thoughtfully, commented and responded on that whirlwind that everyone's going around on of, where's the precedent, where's the precedent, where's the precedent? And
Who
so,
said that?
I'm sorry, not precedent, where's the interpretation? Are we going to interpret?
I think Mr. Brodsky's got it.
I'm referring to general conversations I've been a part of. I'm referring to the general conversation and mood of a lot of people that are involved in this. I'm sort of giving my own sense of the numerous council meetings and planning board meetings that I've watched via Zoom, and the general feeling is what I'm trying to comment on. There's certainly a lot of distractions, but one way to cut through these distractions is to simply refer to Red Bank's own document, ordinance number 2021-17, which says that cannabis must be, it says cannabis businesses shall be prohibited in any area which, under federal or state law, any cannabis businesses should be prohibited. That's what it says. And so whether or not cannabis should or shouldn't be, whether or not the state's going to take precedent over federal law, which I don't know if that even can happen, but that's not even what the question is. The question is adhering to this.
You made your point very strongly.
You made your point, but you're well over on time. We're taking the advice of our attorney in all of our deliberations. And I really appreciate you coming up.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Thank you.
I really do wish good luck to you, Andrew, as well. I think that when they find themselves where they need to be, they'll be great.
Come on. Yep.
Good evening, Alan Hill, people on the Cannon Street.
You sworn last time?
Yeah.
He did. Okay. Oh, you were?
I was sworn in.
Okay, good. You're still under oath.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Actually, raised last time. Something like 10% of the city state, community here are non-citizens. Non-citizens here are actually bound by federal law and are subject to that. Me going into this shop would be a federal offence, which I could be deported.
You're repeating what you did last time about.
I am. The thing I'm going to ask is, what are you going to do to safeguard that 10% of the population?
Nothing.
You're not going to do anything
No.
to.
I'm not going to safeguard them from going into the store or robbing a bank or speeding on the turnpike or do.
And this is.
Because it's not our responsibility to do that. We're a planning board here to interpret and make decisions based on the land use ordinance in town and the municipal land use in New Jersey. And nowhere does it give us the power to do what you're suggesting we do. If something is illegal for someone to do, they shouldn't do it. And it's not our responsibility to make sure that they don't.
But just a final point, last time, you, our attorney, and several people were unclear as to what the law was. So who's going to say what I do is illegal or not? If it's not clear to you, the enforcers, as it were, how is it going to be clear to just the ordinary person in the street? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any comments? Going once, going twice? Oh, I know. Oh, I want to try. Gentleman in the back row. Next to Mr. Murtha.
Yes.
Yep.
You're still under oath.
I'm just gonna go down a quick list for the comments, and hopefully it's pretty brief here. Like I said, I wish success, I just don't want it on my block. I don't, from my understanding, there was no traffic study that was done.
Not required for a minor subdivision.
Okay, but I think we're all familiar with that area, and with the amount of traffic that is going to be, this is gonna be a high volume business. And I think there's going to be a dramatic impact. There's already traffic issues currently, and never mind the fact when we have a large volume of people coming into the area, which already talked about last time with the, you know, in a way, the parking will become even problematic. Once people come in, they're gonna be blocked in, the K-turn out is gonna be difficult. I think you are gonna start having to choose, which I already do at times, other avenues just to get out of town. And I just see this becoming a larger issue. Secondly, I think we're probably gonna need a light down the line there. All right, and there's something we're kind of not addressing a little bit, you know, being that this is a family town. And though there are, you know, for the most part, a lot of the clientele are great citizens. I don't think we should deny the fact there is a transient portion of this population that'll be coming into the town to obtain marijuana. Now with this and having families on the block, and knowing that people are gonna queue on sides, and to speak to a little bit of this trans population, it's like, there are gonna be guards, security guards. There's going to be armored, there's gonna be, I believe it was armored trucks to go in and out, and that's for a reason. The reason is there is an increased chance of negative instances to occur. There are studies that show that where there are dispensaries in the neighborhoods, there is an increase of crime. There is a bunch of them. I have them on the phone if you want me to start kicking out some of this stuff. Now, and the crime is mostly property related, which then that impacts me. With the transit population, this is the way I foresee it. Now, people are gonna, besides the cars coming up and down the block, people are gonna be taking the train. And then from the train, they're gonna walk by my house. And, you know, being in the west side of Red Bank at times, I mean, I've already had some issues of solicitors, and I just foresee this going up dramatically. So like, for example, I foresee like me taking my kids out of the car and then somebody, you know, some harassment statement or somebody asking for money. I mean, it has occurred in the past prior to this. I just foresee this transient population coming in, going to be even more so. And then also to think about the family, the young kids around the block. I mean, I'm sorry, straight across the street. I just see queued people just looking at families while they're just doing their thing. Because there are families like right there. I think at one part of the school zone, I think we're seeing it as like, you know, we talked about the federal law about before. You know, the political winds can change. If there was a crackdown, and I hate to see that if there was something set up that could cause an issue down the line. But also we got to remember why, because of the school zone, it's because kids go down that block. So you're gonna have kids that I constantly see kids walking up and down the block. Now I'm first seeing people queued, people driving, all to get there. There's a bus stop at the end of my block of, I think, 5-year-olds where a bunch of them sit outside waiting with their families. I don't know what school it goes to, but all I know is I see it there. So there's almost just the impact of the kids related to the schools in the surrounding areas. And all right, that's for the most part the points I wanted to make. So I think the logistics, we have a problem, and I think a little bit for the insect community right there, it's not ideal to have people constantly going there to pick up drugs. Though I do hope you're the best in the business. I just don't want it on my block. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else besides Mr. Wertzinger that has a comment? Come on up, sir, in the back, and then the lady.
Thank you for giving me.
Mr. Knox, right?
Yes, that's
Cylinder Road.
one other point that I just wanted to make very briefly.
I want to understand the planning board's decision that expanding zones for cannabis was part of the master plan and reflected in the master plan. Is there anybody that could explain that part to me?
Yes, I will briefly summarize that very long meeting. The planning board came to the conclusion that the areas that the council suggested in their ordinance for cannabis retailers was less than economically encouraging for the borough of Red Bank. We felt that they were very restricted areas, and we thought that as a conditionally permitted retail use in a town with lots of retail spaces and lots of retail zones, that the choices made were restrictive.
I understand you were actually chairman of the committee for that, weren't you? For the
Master Plan Review Committee, yes.
Right. So I reviewed that master plan. I really didn't see much mention of cannabis.
You wouldn't, we just,
Just this past February. So what has changed between February and now that you would need to consider expanding zones?
we didn't take into account cannabis. The planning board looked at overall economic feasibility in the borough of Red Bank as part of the master plan. And restricting uses as tightly as the council chose to do, we felt was in conflict with the master plan. It was not, cannabis wasn't specifically referenced in the master plan.
Actually, it was in just a very brief way, saying that it was sort of affirming that it was okay to be in BR1 zone at both the industrial and light industrial zones. One of the things that jumped out to me about that master plan is there were really three areas that kind of grabbed my attention. On page 1 of the master plan, it's different page number of it.
Is it specifically related to this application? Because I gave you like 9 minutes before.
Well, I'll try to be as quick as I can.
I'll give you one more minute.
It says the master plan relies on the existing plans completed by the borough. Doesn't say anything about making changes. Later on page 138, under paragraph entitled proposed zoning map changes, it says, for the most part, the master plan recommends maintaining Red Bank's existing zoning districts with some modifications to address specific planning issues. Then it lists the 6 specific issues, and changing the zoning for cannabis is not mentioned in there. And then on page 146, under the paragraph entitled conclusion, it says this master plan proposes zoning map changes listed above. So I'm just still a little confused how the master plan is being interpreted to expand cannabis zones when the language of it is actually to the contrary.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, but we're gonna spend time on this.
so it's not expanding the zone at all. It's still permitted in the BR1 zone.
It's expanding the green zone.
There is no green zone. There's different zones, and if you want to call me tomorrow, I can better explain what zoning is and the different types of zones. And what's permitted as a conditional use and what's permitted as a right use. And the way how you're looking at the map, as in like the map that was originally put out, that there's these areas that's permitted within that zone, which is the BR1 zone. So it just limit the number of places that you could put it within that specific zone. So it's not that there's a zone created just for cannabis.
I understand that.
The council restricted the uses beyond the BR1 zone.
Right.
The ordinance that we received that we felt was in conflict with the master plan chose not to include the entire BR1 zone where it was permitted. They restricted it beyond what it was originally set for, which is why we felt it was not in compliance with the master plan from an economic feasibility standpoint. At the same time, it's not permitted in the RB zone or the RA zone, but it was permitted in the BR1 zone, and the council chose to further restrict that.
I guess my confusion is that I'm looking at a map that says the drug-free zone map.
For illegal drugs.
Well, for controlled substances.
We're going.
Yeah, we've been down this road. We're not, that's not within our purview.
No, it's not a matter that It just,
Good job.
you made a very good job, and a very good
Great
argument.
job, but
Look,
the drug,
there's no, not, there's a time where you cut it off and you just are repeating it again.
Right there.
You did a very good job. You really did.
And your shop is one of the nicest in Red Bank.
Yeah.
It genuinely is.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't been.
what is
It owns an antique shop on front. It's gorgeous.
Can we get an idea how much more, because we want to get our times and breaks? Anybody else before we put the council on?
we're gonna break before, but when we're done with the public pre-council, we're gonna break. Please tell us your name and address.
And swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay, good.
Danielle List, owner at 2830 West Street as well as 3436 West Street. I don't want to repeat too much of what was already mentioned by others in the neighborhood. But we are concerned about increased traffic on the street. Cars doing K-turns, turning around in driveways to try to park on the street. There are, as we've heard, families with children on the street. Just want to make sure that the planning board is taking the safety of residents into account when we make these decisions. The
Can
other
I
point,
comment on that, not to take away from your time?
absolutely,
Keep in mind that traffic by itself. The planning board really can't weigh traffic too heavily. I don't want to say, not at all, because we do in some respects. But the change of use here is a conditionally permitted use that's retail. And there's been no testimony that this use will have more or less car traffic than a liquor store. But let's say it had a little. And if an intersection is already busy, and it's true, it's busy. And to whoever said before, you plan how you're going to get in and out of town based on traffic and the time of day, we all do it everywhere in town. Traffic's bad in Red Bank, but it's not just one applicant or one property owner's responsibility. That's the problem with the law in New Jersey. If an intersection is failing and someone wants to open a permitted or conditionally permitted use that's not necessarily a drastic change from the prior use, we can't deny an application for that. So could traffic be worse? It could. Could traffic be better? It might. Times of day might change. To the safety issue, K-turns, things of that sort, I would encourage any resident ever, if you have a problem with something like that, you really should call the police. Because if there are significant issues like that, there are code enforcement issues that need to be taken into account. That we don't have a crystal ball. We can't be sure what's going to or not going to happen. I understand that someone doesn't want something in their neighborhood. I totally understand that. But if something goes sideways, that's why we have code enforcement and that's why we have the police department.
the only other point I'd like to make is that, and I have to say that the whole process is very confusing and there's a lot of hearsay. So I'm going to preface what I'm saying with that. So we've heard that there are 3 potential cannabis dispensaries potentially opening within a couple blocks of one another. I don't know what the limit is in the.
It's 3
It's,
in town is the limit of retail.
and so I guess what we're hearing is that potentially all 3 will be in the same small area, one potentially in the Wawa Shopping Center, this 156 West Front Street, and then 9 West Street. Is that?
Ultimately, it's up to this is only one of the steps on the way. Ultimately, the council has to issue a license, but the one where China Moon has been approved. And you have this one. There is an application earlier that we carried to July 17th, which is across the street. We generally would not take into account the number of uses, although I will tell you, many restaurateurs in town bring it up to me on a regular basis that how the hell could you let another pizza place open? And they do on a regular basis, and they know who they are. It's really not something that a planning board could take into consideration when granting a permitted or conditionally permitted use.
Just wanted to.
And I get what you're saying, but an applicant has a right to open where they're permitted or conditionally permitted to open. Which, keep in mind, was also one of the reasons that we didn't like the ordinance that the council sent because it was incredibly restrictive about where uses were permitted. And I personally, not that I think it's gonna happen, I don't see why we couldn't have a cannabis dispensary downtown if we can have one in your neighborhood or on Newman Springs Road. And I don't know if that's gonna happen or not, but that was back to the other question. That was one of the reasons we didn't like the ordinance the way it came, was because it was not permitted in everywhere that a retail use could be.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Go ahead.
You don't want to squeeze the,
You want to?
squeeze you in?
No, I want to do a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Oh, no, we're going to take a 5-minute break, which means we're not going to let it be more than 10. So it is 8:27. So let's make it quick. Thank you.
like current.
Probably done that already.
And that point is family and.
Well, let's see.
Family visit.
And they have to get a license.
Chairman, are we ready?
A year by now.
I felt bad because.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 8:44. Well done. We have a roll call, please.
Alex Schroeder,
Here. Oh, it's not turning on.
Dan Mancuso,
Here.
Art Murphy,
Here.
Juanita Lewis. Here. Lou Demento,
Here.
Christina Bonatakis. Here. Barbara Boas. Here. David Cassidy.
Here.
Fred Stone.
Here. Mr. Worsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I would like to
Oh, you're good.
state what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting on May 1st. I truly believe the board last jurisdiction to hear this matter. Notice effective is deficient. Not include all of the requested approvals that were being sought. And it fails. The applicant has tried to remedy that by re-noticing and including all references to site plan and all the variances and so forth. But you cannot have a notice retroactive. That is giving the battle plan after the troops are on the shore. It doesn't work that way, and it's not legally sufficient. So that's number one.
All right, counsel, I agree with you. We accepted jurisdiction based on the first notice. And I don't believe if we were wrong, the second notice doesn't cure it. I agree with you. But we did accept on the first notice.
I understand.
We had that discussion.
I'm just suggesting that if not explicitly, it's tacitly recognized by the applicant that the first notice was deficient. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone through that exercise with the board having accepted jurisdiction.
I explained that wasn't the case.
Okay.
Not while I was.
You were sitting right there.
Oh, come on, let's go on. Get to the merits of why it shouldn't be granted.
Let me address for a moment the initial issue raised by Mr. Knox. And his reference to the ordinance, let me give you another reference. He referenced apparently a pamphlet version of it at 2021-17. That's codified in Groves Development Regulations as section 490-56.2 subsection L. And with all due respect to everybody, I think the point is being missed. It is not an issue of whether selling and distributing marijuana or cannabis is legal under state law or under federal law. We live, our whole constitutional republic is based upon federalism, and that is duality in jurisdiction between the federal government and state governments. And the fact of the matter here is Red Bank didn't have to adopt the ordinance that it adopted. It did not have to include the reference that it included. So it doesn't matter. Nobody, I'm not sitting here suggesting that the federal government is rigorously enforcing the possession or sale, distribution of controlled dangerous substances, which is in Title 21, Section 801. The schedule that Mr. Knox referred to is at Schedule 1, subsection C. Marijuana is item 10 in that, and it is identified as a controlled dangerous substance under federal law. And it is still under federal law illegal to distribute. It doesn't say only illicitly do it, it can't be distributed. But here's the point, that is not the issue here. The Red Bank in its ordinance adopted the language that says cannabis businesses shall be prohibited in any area in which, under state or federal law, any cannabis business would be prohibited from operating based upon its proximity to a school and other facilities. So the issue simply is one of proximity. It's not, Red Bank is saying, we don't, if there's a 1,000-foot limitation in federal law that would make the distribution improper, it shouldn't be located. It's not saying it can't be located in other areas. Of course, that's a state law. But and the point that Mr. Knox was making, and he should have continued on, is this location is not the right fit. Wawa doesn't have those prescriptions. But this place does. It's an issue of distance, and Red Bank codified it in its ordinance. It didn't have to. So whatever state law or federal law has prohibitions on distance for the distribution or sale of cannabis, that can't be done. It may be done in other spots in the VR zone, VR1 zone, but not within that distance. Second issue is that under state law, you have, and by the way, the section on the drug-free zone, that's in section 680 of Title 20. Those three sections. Looking at the state law, I realized the Red Bank ordinance talks about alcohol sales and marijuana sales being okay as long as there's a dividing partition, separate entrances, but that's not the state. And the borough can't change the prohibitions and restrictions that are codified in state law. State law is in section 24:6I-35, and that's in subsection 14. B, which establishes prohibitions with respect to other types of retail businesses, actually with cannabis retailers. And it says a cannabis retailer's premises shall not be located in or upon any premises in which a lot of food sales, or in which operates a store that engages in licensed retail sales of alcoholic beverages. We can debate all day long about use of premises, the definition of that premises and so forth. The point is, if this isn't a direct violation of the verbiage here, it certainly is us. Why would you prohibit side-by-side uses, but it's okay in this situation? So there's that to deal with. And I point out also that in the same state statute, it allows on the same premises, if you take a multi-acre tract, for a cannabis and a liquor store to be in a strip mall, to be in a shopping center. This is not a strip mall or shopping center. This is a second intense use being shoehorned into a very small area that doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And I would say this to you too. This, to me, the cannabis ordinance in town is a classic example of unintended consequences. The Borough Council went ahead and authorized cannabis retailers on additional new spaces in August of 21, as pretty quickly as they could do. They didn't address the intensity of these businesses and the impact they have on them. It was not addressed. And so by default, on an ordinance basis, it falls within the general parameter of general retail of 4 spots per thousand. But please, let's not park our common sense out on the side. These 20, and I'll suggest to you, if anybody wants to go back and read it, listen to the tapes, there was testimony on the first that there would be up to 38 people. They're not dropping in by helicopter. They're parking. And there isn't sufficient parking. It's not the right fit. It's not the right fit. And I agree with Chairman with most of your comments regarding committee uses and traffic studies and so forth. But this would have been an appropriate time to have a traffic engineer doing parking analysis. This would be very.
I have never in my entire career had a traffic engineer hired by an applicant come in and testify anything other than what the applicant wanted to hear.
So
You should have,
what does that tell you?
you should have hired a traffic engineer
So what is
between the last 2 meetings to come in and testify for what you wanted someone to say. But you know that that's true.
Why would you put these people who own businesses and stuff?
The onus is equal for either party to ever take advantage of. This is a minor subdivision of a conditionally permitted use. I'm sorry, I apologize. Site-
There's another problem in that the New Jersey law, and I don't know, it's good law, says that if it's a permitted use, and this is a permitted use without getting into the 1,000 feet, is that you can't, if it's a permitted use, you can't say you can't have it because you create more traffic. That's,
Parking analysis, I want to be very clear.
oh, okay. And then you got an issue about parking analysis and whether or not they're both retail uses and the parking is created by the sides of the building, not the use that's inside. So you got that problem too.
I understand the problem. Let's not park our common sense.
Okay.
We hear you.
And I would say this to you, I heard here several times that we follow the laws of the state of New Jersey. The borough's ordinance as it relates and adopts the federal distance, is the law of the state of New Jersey.
We're getting your points. Go ahead.
I don't think I have much of anything else. I addressed with you the notice issue, I addressed the 1,000-foot issue on the premises and the whole site plan. I would suggest to you also, I mean, I understand it's a minor subdivision. I've had that thrown at me a couple of times.
Site plan.
Minor site plan, yeah, now I'm following. Minor site plan. The applicant has to comply with the request of what the board wants. And if the board wants to see a parking analysis or anything else, it is in fact permitted.
It could be, but it would be inconsistent the way we've behaved for decades. As far as minor site plans go.
And we're stuck with what we get, right? I would point out to you, though, that contrary to what the applicant said, this is not the ideal site. This is not the right fit. This is not conforming. You already have with the one use that's on the property, 0.3 feet in a front yard setback. Do we really need to shoehorn another business in this location under these considerations and with the parameters and the constraints that I've already referenced? With that, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention, and I hope you take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call for anyone from the public who has a comment or a question.
Now let's go to Brodsky and Mandan.
Yeah.
One more.
Come on up. Yep. Raise your right hand.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Your name and address?
Speak up much louder.
My name is Daylene Collado. I live on 17 Broad Street. My statement is very short and sweet. I want to be able to walk to somewhere where I can legally purchase cannabis. I suffer from PTSD. I don't need to go into details about that, but I want to be able to go somewhere safely and purchase what I need. Very simple, very simple. That's it.
Thank you. Someone else had their hand up. Come on up, sir.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do. Sean Smith, 17 Drive. These people are.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Speak a little louder, please.
Yeah.
Louder.
Sean Smith. 17 Kingfisher Drive for Middletown.
Yeah. A little bit.
These people are outstanding citizens of the community. They're good business owners. I think there'd be more security, more safety in the area, have more security cameras, have 2 security guards. They run legitimate business. I see them in the mall. Liquor stores tend not to run very well sometimes, and we're trying to see traffic from this place with cause. They also have the right to refuse to serve customers. They don't see the customers in the right fit. I feel like that. Also, my understanding is one of the uses of the building, if it doesn't get permitted, the city's gonna try and buy it. Use it as a tear down, use it as an exit for apartments they're gonna build. We want to call it, talk about parking issues and traffic issues. There's gonna be parking issue and traffic issue there. But I don't see why a legitimate business, it's a good plan, good security plan. And it's everything laid out. Shouldn't be permitted to operate. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you. Mr. Brodsky, do you have anything else you want to add?
I do, Mr. Chair. I do want to address a number of the comments and also just give some closing remarks. So we've heard a lot of points that have been raised, by those more on a philosophical level, more of a cannabis legalization issue in my mind than specifics with respect to the proposed location. As the chair has indicated throughout the hearing, the planning board's mission is, and charter, if you will, is to apply the zoning ordinance in the town, and to apply it fairly and reasonably, and to waive the testimony and apply the law that is applicable. It's a limited jurisdiction, right, that the planning board has. I just want to bring everyone back to the fact that, look, Red Bank opted in, right? Cannabis is legal in the state. Red Bank has opted in as one of the many municipalities in New Jersey that elected to do so. By opting in, one of the elements of opting in is to specifically zone areas of town in which cannabis retail sales and other related cannabis uses would be permitted. Right? The BR1 zone is one of the zones that the mayor and council, the elected officials, identified as a zone to conditionally permit the sale of retail cannabis. And this site lies in that zone, right? And so the board's mission then is to apply the zoning criteria that's applicable to the site in the BR1 zone. And remember, we're talking about a conditional use. The ordinance sets forth 6 specific conditions that, if met, create a permitted use in the zone, right? The testimony before you has established that all 6 of those criteria, and we went through them specifically last time, have been met. Right? No sale of alcohol or tobacco, use separated and with a separate entrance. Cannabis plants, products, paraphernalia cannot be visible from outside the building. Hours of operation are limited to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Any applicant is required to provide a detailed security plan, and all signage has to comply. So all of those conditions have been met. So now we go to, well, why are we here at the planning board? Obviously, we have to establish that those conditions have been satisfied. We also have a situation that with respect to the parking, the existing parking lot has 7 spaces under the ordinance here in town, based on the square footage of the building, 9 spaces. It's 8 point something, which is rounded up to 9 spaces are required based on the existing square footage. There are 7. So as a result, and that is a pre-existing use, a pre-existing condition, by the way. The 7 spaces exist, and they exist with respect to this building. We are coming in as a retail use that is conditionally permitted in the zone. And so arguably, there is not even a variance requirement associated with the parking, but out of an abundance of caution, we have applied for that to give the board that discretion. We also have presented detailed testimony of a thoughtful process, right, in support of the deficiency in parking, right? We testified you heard testimony about the steps that are going to be taken in order for in order to justify and reconcile that difference, that deficiency in the parking. You heard that, there are 7 parking spaces. All of the employees are going to be motivated, directed as a condition of employment to utilize the parking lot that is open to the public, that is literally steps away. Fully sidewalks, steps away. Also, Owners as well are going to be parking off site to maximize the utilization of that lot for potential customers. And whatever street parking exists. We know we can't count that in terms of satisfying our parking obligation under the ordinance, but we reference it, as I think the chair indicated earlier, as another element of the analysis for the board to take into consideration in considering this proposed location. So that's crucial. And when there were questions raised earlier about why, there was discussion about why is this site appropriate? What's special about this site? Well, we talked about the zoning, which provides for it as a conditional use. We talked about this, the proximity to a large, mostly underutilized parking lot that is very proximate to the proposed location. And so those are all the elements that go into determining whether or not this is an appropriate location. Those are the elements that have gone into the consideration and the thoughtful process by these local business owners, potential local business owners, to invest a significant amount of money into the site, knowing that parking will always be a concern. Just like restaurants downtown that have no parking spaces, just like, Red Bank and every municipality deals with that all the time. And what boards do is they undertake that thoughtful process as to, okay, how do we reconcile the fact that there's going to be more parking required than is provided on the particular site? We talk about proximity to the local, to the public lot. Very important for this and the other steps being taken. We heard also discussion about things, probably beyond the purview of the planning board, but with regard to that tension between federal and state law. I think Mr. Lechstein stated it very succinctly, as did the chair at the last meeting, and I think even again this evening. And legal briefs were submitted to the board in response to a board member's questions last time with regard to that interplay between federal and state. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers these days that are devoting their entire career to cannabis law, because it is certainly, let's say, an evolving area of the law. But what is clear is that cannabis has been legalized in New Jersey, okay? And there is that counterplay with the federal law continuing to list cannabis as illegal, but as and I'll just summarize in the brief that I've submitted, Congress has expressly declared its unwillingness to enforce the Controlled Substances Act or to preempt New Jersey's authority over state-approved cannabis facilities. And thus, the state's legalization of cannabis and accompanying regulations effectively override this federal prohibition within the state. CREMA, which is the statute that legalized cannabis here in New Jersey, specifically referenced that any concerns with regard to drug-free zoning have been met by removing cannabis from its list of controlled dangerous substances, right? And so that's the situation we have here. And as Mr. Lechstein indicated earlier, if you take the argument that federal law absolutely preempts state law in all circumstances, then you have to apply that across the board, which means couldn't have anything, couldn't have any cannabis activity in the state where it has been legalized because of that existence of federal law. It's just not the case. It's not the case. Cannabis has been legalized here in New Jersey and further here in Red Bank. So when we get down to the board's mission here and looking at this particular application, right? You heard the testimony that we're talking about locating the business in an existing building. which, there's certainly room for improvement from an aesthetic and architectural perspective. And part of the application proposes significant, improvements to that, to the aesthetic, and the looks, of the building. You heard about the details of the security plan, which is very detailed, very costly, and is something that is going to be followed through, and must be followed through as a condition of approval. And remember, this point was made early on last time, and I think it's the board should remain cognizant of it. The type of license that this applicant has been awarded is what's called a micro license, right? And it has limitations, a number of limitations in the different areas, including the maximum size of the potential location, and importantly, that there has to be local ownership. Okay, what has been seen throughout the state of New Jersey are a lot of these large national companies even opening up, and frankly, a number of the comments that we've heard have been from people who are associated with some of those larger companies, and which they didn't disclose when they made comments to the board. And so I think that's a very important component. So any operator that is operating pursuing to a state issued micro license has to be owned by either residents of that municipality in which the site is located, or an adjacent municipality, which is the case here. This applicant is also woman owned, and but the point is that these are local operators that are going to be investing right in their own towns in some cases, and in their own county. We heard comments from Mr. Worsinger on behalf of the owner. I call it the Plaza Building, but I know the specific entity is 141. And of course, that company has been before the zoning board on a number of applications seeking to expand its business, add many apartments, sought density variances, sought and various other variances. And specifically, we were talking about traffic plans. The traffic plan that was submitted on the last application sought to direct all traffic onto West Street to access the new site with all of the apartments. So, you know, there's always questions when those kinds of comments are raised by people that have an interest other than looking to encourage the board to act reasonably on an application. So our pitch here to you is simply this. We're here on a conditionally permitted use, right? We've gone through extensive testimony establishing that we've met all of the conditions. We've gone through significant testimony as to a thoughtful business plan as to how the parking is to be addressed. Now, listen, I understand that people, and we've heard it, people saying, no problem with the use, just not on my block, not in my backyard, so to speak. And we understand that. I mean, my first house was next to a firehouse, and the fire horn blew right into my kid's bedroom whenever there was a fire. This is a community. We abide by the zoning laws that we are given, and that's what the planning board is supposed to do. So when you take all of that into consideration, we didn't hear a lot about deficiencies with respect to this particular site. We heard a lot about other things, about other legality issues and federal state law and things of that nature, and issues with regard to the notice and things like that. But the fact of the matter is this a perfect site? I don't know that a perfect site exists in any of the zones that conditionally permit this type of use. And that's the job of the planning board, to reconcile those kinds of things. And we would ask that the board do so in this case, react and act favorably on the application, and the variance with regard to the parking, as well as the location of the condenser.
Thank you, Mr. Broxy. That being said, do we have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Does anyone from the board have any other questions for the engineer, or any member of the board?
I let Mr. Brodsky a question, or just closed it?
You could, yeah, that's Mike.
I actually, you are correct. So there was testimony from, we've heard the tension between federal, state, but really it's a question of what our local ordinance is. And 3L says
Let me address
federal, so I just want to, because Mr. Knotts brought it up, so I just want to make sure we're issuing that tension within our own ordinance, not just state and federal law.
Hold on.
And now you should be live.
The thing is that out of the box, you get confused. And I don't think that I or this board is high enough a court to determine the argument on the federal level, but I tell you how I solve it in my mind. Is that this is a conditional use. If they didn't meet all the conditions, including conformance with the borough ordinances, they would have been ruled to have to go to the Board of Adjustment. But the zoning officer ruled that it goes to the planning board, and there's a 20-day appeal period for that. Nobody appealed it. That means that we were the proper venue to hear this matter. And we're not going to solve the war between when Congress is going to take off the stigma of marijuana or not. We just follow what the land use says. And the land use says that there was no use variance necessary, and therefore we don't get into that. You like that solution?
That's good. That's why you make the big
That's why
bucks.
you pay me the high.
That's exactly it. That answer your question, Dave?
I think so. I don't know if it answers everyone's.
Well, you know,
I mean,
can't answer everyone.
There's a lot of gray areas, so that, we're all a little murky, but.
The gray, yes.
Does anyone on the board want to make a motion
I'll make the motion, Chairman,
to do what?
pass the ordinance. I mean, pass the,
To approve or deny?
to approve.
Is there a second?
There are,
There are conditions I want to go over if we go that route. Is there a second to the motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay, so I want to talk through the conditions I've written down and let's see if we're not missing any.
All right.
A requirement that the employees park off-site. As per the chief of police memo, no curbside pickup.
Yes.
Obviously, all aspects of the engineering letter, a couple of which I'll probably repeat here. You obviously have to apply for a license from the council. Delivery frequency and trash pickup was going to be twice a week before 10 a.m. Do I have that right? Okay. You're going to
Delivery.
and trash pickup twice a week before 10 a.m.
Okay.
You're going to repair the parking lot. Any mural, I know there was some mention of a mural at some point down the road, that's got to be approved by the mayor and council. There was a contribution to the Shade Tree Commission, which I believe is in the engineer's letter. And we talked about roof leaders being erected under the sidewalk into the street. And it's probably in the engineer's letter.
Yes. Okay.
Am I missing anything, or does anyone have any recollection of anything else? All right, Christine.
Okay, external trash receptacle, we can get that,
Or was that?
in the event of queuing, so we avoid,
Did we talk about that?
It was quickly mentioned. I don't know. Is that in the engineering letter at all?
no, that was me, we said it on the spot.
Okay, let's put in there that they provide adequate outside trash receptacle.
it's marked on the plan here but I think we were asking for some sort of an enclosure, right? Like a
No, we were asking
barrier.
for trash, just a trash can, so if you're standing there.
The trash enclosure is
You have a place-
Right there,
That's fine.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about a trash can in front in case there's queuing, that there's no garbage on the street. Okay. You're okay with that?
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call, please.
Alex Broder. Approved. Pam Mancuso,
Yes.
Art Murphy,
Yes.
Juanita Lewis. No. Lou Demento,
Yes.
Christina Bonatakis,
Yes.
Barbara Boas.
Yes.
Dave, actually,
I missed last meeting. I'm
yes,
not valid.
and Fred Stone.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate everyone coming. This is not easy. This is not an easy one at all. There's a lot of back and forth on this type of application. And I very much appreciate everyone from the public coming. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
I just want everyone to know, I wasn't dodging. I had a law school final.